Hey, welcome back, everybody. I'm glad to have you here in my own personal space. Back up a little bit. No? Okay, you're good right there. This is Turn the Page. I am your host, Tony Stevens, your local neighborhood star power. I'm glad to be back here with you, and I'm so happy you're continuing to watch our show. I am joined again by my good friend, John McClay, the Sex Appeal. Go ahead and say hey to the audience.
Hey to the audience.
That's right. That's exactly how you're supposed to introduce yourself, and I appreciate him for that. We're going to go ahead and go through some news for you, but first, before I do that, I want to remind you to like, subscribe, share with your friends and family, even your grandmother, because we're a huge proponent of grandmothers watching digital YouTube shows. And on top of that, actually, TTP right here, we're presenting to you a Patreon experience. All right, so you can go ahead. I'm going to provide a link after the fact through my technical difficulties department, and we're going to get it so that you can link right into our Patreon. Check it out, read through it. We're actually going to be doing a contest giveaway. So if you're able to like the Patreon, share the post, and get 2 other friends that you shared it with, then you're automatically enrolled for a raffle to win a Turn the Page mug prize gift set. Okay, so that's a box set of awesome mugs created by Turn the Page's awesome art department, which is actually, her name is Laura Hibbard. She's beautiful, she's excellent, artistic, and great. So support us, and we'll support you by continuing to bring you news and fun facts about things you didn't know you were thinking about until I told you you were. But to kick that off, actually, just in toy news alone, and John, I know that you don't necessarily jump on board with the toy collector venue. You have a few things. I appreciate your apartment. Your apartment's actually one of the coolest places I've ever been.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's got an eclectic feel to it. If you're from the local Memphis, Tennessee area, you would know what the word Midtown means. His apartment has a very Midtown feel, very eclectic. It's got a lot of nice books.
I've heard Bohemian before.
Bohemian?
Yeah.
You are giving me some Rhapsody right now. So I'll go with that. Bohemian. It's a very bohemian appeal. And you actually just got, what was that I saw the other day? You had actually just gotten a new, nice book that you were adding to your collection.
Oh, it was the Norse mythology, select stories from Norse mythology.
It had a beautiful
cover
to it. Yeah, I was really
leather bound, gold inlay, the whole thing. It's great.
Man, see, and that's where you get the bohemian appeal to your apartment. It's like a professor that's off work trying to teach people how to live life in a nice Zen Buddhist way. So I appreciate that about you. And everybody can kind of see what he's got going on back there most of the time. So it's a cool, crazy place. You should probably see if whenever you visit Memphis, Tennessee, and you're doing some sort of like a Airbnb, maybe John will start selling tickets to go through his house, like a little tour of his house, and then you can leave. All right? Not really. I don't think he wants that kind of attention.
Or you can stay.
Or
forever.
Is that what that other hidden room is? I didn't know.
Don't come to my house. Don't come to my house.
Yeah, once you go to John's house, you never leave. So, but honestly, in toy news, I know that you have a few things that stand around your house. You've got a very eclectic feel. But Marvel Legends has been knocking things out of the park one year after the next, produced obviously by Hasbro, local to, I believe it's Rhode Island where they're based out of. But it is an American company. It's been doing a great job with a lot of the Marvel products. They've also got G.I. Joe, a few other things, deals with Walmart. But they are releasing a House of X. Now, our last episode, you know that we talked very passionately about House of X. They are releasing a House of X inspired wave for Marvel Legends. So you'll get like the White Knight version Magneto, the new Professor X with the black suit, large cranial Cerebro unit, which is very neat. My adorable sidekick unfortunately couldn't be here due to obligations with his family. However, we miss you, we support you, buddy, but I wish you were here because you'd be giddy and laughing and turning red in the face about how happy you are on this news. It's definitely cool. Another thing that he threw out there to me is the Razor Crest. Now that's the ship that's premiering Mandalorian TV show that's on Disney Plus, and they're doing a crowd-funded version of that. Okay, so this is going to be a large object. This isn't like, hey, I'm going to go buy a Hot Wheels real quick. This is like, hey, John, let's hang this from your ceiling as if it's a chandelier. I don't know
So
if
who's
you
making
actually
it? You said it was crowdfunded.
It is crowdfunded. It is a Hasbro product. So much the
That's
same as
weird.
they just did this for a Marvel product, which was the Sentinel. Okay, so they just did a recent crowdfunded version of the Sentinel, which, if I remember, was about 3 feet tall. That it's going to be when it finally gets to people. So my infant stepson is actually almost shorter than this Sentinel that they're releasing. To give you an idea of perspective, he's about a little under 2 years old. This thing is about as big as he is.
Now, is that
So
on Kickstarter or
it's
Indiegogo?
not, no. So it goes through what they have is called HasLabs. So it's
Oh,
their
okay.
own version. Basically, it's like their own company boxed version of a Kickstarter. So much the same as Todd McFarlane's out there still running his Kickstarter for the Spawn figures. And if I remember correctly, he's actually adding some of that Kickstart funding to his Spawn movie project, the Spawn reboot that's supposed to come out. So I'm really down for that. I really hope he's able to achieve that. But yeah, so that's what Hasbro does. They have their HasLabs is what they're calling it. And that section is basically these large high-end collectibles that are going to cost us a lot of money to actually produce. We don't want to just put them out there on the shelves 50 at a time and hope that people are going to buy them for the right price. We're going to go ahead and have them reserve one, pay down for it, and then create them. And as it extends, just like Kickstarter, you get extra little fun things. So for the Sentinel, I know it got extra heads that you could interchange. It had little 6-inch scale figures that were going to come with it. So each time that they met their goal, they added something new and interesting and unique to this toy build. So for the Razor Crest, I would imagine maybe a 6-inch version of the Mando, maybe what will really blow everybody's socks off with a little 6-inch scale version of Baby Yoda. And right there and then, people are automatically giving them hundreds of dollars just for a small piece of plastic that looks like a green infant. I don't know how you feel about that.
If you want to waste money, go ahead. It's good for the economy, right?
It is good for the economy because, like I said, I did mention it is an American-based company. It's an American-based corporation. They do have a lot of their factories out there in Rhode Island, their headquarters. Now, of course, like anybody else, you're going to have some overseas production teams, things of that nature. But this would actually go into our economy. So if that's the way that you want to participate, then please do so. Because that would be a great way to go about it. And you get a really cool, large new chandelier to hang from your ceiling. You probably put some light up functions on it so I can actually convince my wife that it's a chandelier and she might actually let me do it.
I'll hook up some fiber optics if you get it, and then I'll help you.
See, there we go. Game on. Challenge accepted. But yeah, that's a big part of toy news. There's, like I said, there was also the Spawn Kickstarter, and off that, I really, like I said, he's funding a lot into that, so hopefully that actually goes through for them, and that'll work out. There's other things going on now, mostly that's in the movies and TV department. So as we all know, and I know, John, you're very sad about this. One of my favorite experiences is actually going with you to a movie theater because it's very intense watching you watch a movie.
Okay, I did not realize that you felt that way.
Well, yeah. Well, what was the last one we got to see? You went with me to go see The Joker, right?
I think it was. It was The Joker. Yeah, that was the last movie I saw in the theater.
It was great, though. And my wife actually just recently started watching that on streaming today. She was asking me a lot of questions about it. And I said, look, sweetheart, it doesn't really have a whole lot of basis in like fact of character, but I don't want you to get, persuaded by that. I love this movie. It is a great movie. It's just hard to really associate it to anything else. But that that was the last movie we saw together. You were very intense about it, and you had some great thoughts and opinions on it. So I always enjoy going to see that. Maybe coming up in 2021, we're going to get to do that again. Because as everybody knows, the MCU has been an absent presence in the year of 2020. Just another reason.
2 years.
It's an abysmal hole of a year. It's felt like, oh, there's a plague. Oh, there's murder hornets. Oh, there's tsunamis and hurricanes. And I haven't had a Captain America movie in months. So they have actually announced that they've pushed back Black Widow. She is now taking up the May block of 2021. We're also going to have Shang-Chi and the Eternals coming out that year. In addition to that, there are about 12 accumulatively, 12 between their Disney Plus programming and their actual cinematic releases. We're going to have 12 different things just from the MCU coming out in 2021. Now, I mentioned a lot of those. A lot of people have known about those. But what I think is one of the big ones, and I'm not talking about the Winter Soldier and Falcon. They're going to be great. I'm going to watch it. I'm not even talking about Loki, which is one of my favorite things, and I'm hoping to watch it. And
You
I'm
better say WandaVision. You're not talking about?
I'm not talking about it. What I'm talking about is one of the greatest things I have heard in a long time, and that is old Samuel L. Jackson himself is going to be reprising his role as Nicholas J. Fury on his own Disney Plus focused series.
Well, this must be brand new news. I have not heard this.
That is going to be epic. I think that he's a great actor. He's one of the greats of our time. And just with the way that he maneuvers through the character, I can't wait to see how that show centers around him. Because
right now, I'm starting to think.
Well, it's like, Captain America. What's his superpower? Well, he's got strength and endurance and
integrity.
Shield.
Integrity is his superpower.
When you watch his movies, you know that his real great thing is leadership. So you've got these other characters that show up in his movies. Captain America 3 ended up almost being like a separate Avengers movie. So I feel like Nicholas Fury would be much akin to that. We might get a whole lot of additional Shield espionage information. We might get a few characters showing up in there, maybe like Hawkeye or something, and then move forward from there. So I'm really excited about that. And that also means that somewhere out there, the Hot Toys production company is going to make a new 12-inch version of Nick Fury, and I will buy myself a Samuel L. Jackson stand-in toy. That will be like right here. You might not even see Iron Man anymore. I'm going to replace it with Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. He's just the best. Now, off that, we've also got some news about the Black Adam. I don't know how much. Did you ever read anything from Shazam, DC Comics?
No, not really. I think I was first introduced to Black Adam from an animated movie. I believe it was a Superman All-Star. And that was the first time I saw Black Adam. And
the short that went on the front of the movie.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That movie was basically 3 shorts, I think, and one of them dealt with Black Adam.
He is an epic character, especially to opinionate that in the time of Egypt being the high seat of the world. You got to rewind way back to where like the Egyptian gods were the gods to believe in. The pyramids were fresh and brand new, and you had Egypt and the pharaohs were actually the high seat of the world, rivaled by like none at the time. So that's the time frame you're looking at, as far as I'm concerned, with Adam Teth when you're talking about the Black Adam. Now, at that time, he was the big superhero. He was actually the Superman of that age. But as we know him in current times, because he's continued to live, he's continued to kind of view justice in his own way, he's not exactly what you would call a superhero in current times. And the heroes stand against him, most likely. However, in that being the time frame, and we already know that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has signed on to be the titular character of Black Adam, Now we've also received news that a very good actor, you might know him from an old show in 2008 called Leverage, Aldous Hodge, has been signed on to be Hawkman in this movie. So he'll be the Hawkman of that day and age, which of course that character reincarnates, so he may not be the Hawkman throughout the whole DCU, but for this movie at least, he will get a pretty big role being Hawkman. So that's pretty big news. Did you ever even watch the show Leverage?
I've seen a couple episodes. I don't. Is it still going on? Like this was a few years ago.
Still no. It got canceled at some point in time, but for the run that it had, it was really good. I felt really comfortable watching it.
Yeah, it was definitely like a comfort show, probably for older people like ourselves, because it was reminiscent of an earlier era.
I said Nam had a big toll on us.
Oh yeah, so yeah. I guess I go a little bit further back than you, but that type of episodic, based storytelling, and that wasn't the only reason that it felt like an older show. As production value was that of a older show, the way it was written.
Yeah, it definitely it was a very sitcom quality. But he had a good role on it. I cannot remember the name that he actually carried in the show, but he was the hacker. He was the technical guy, and he was always sneaking into places and getting things done. So he did a very good job with that. Hopefully he can carry that kind of personality over here for us into the Hawkman, and see how we can get that to be a bigger appeal to a greater audience. And
something that just occurred to me, that The Rock was also the Scorpion King, and this is kind of playing the same vein. Like he was a good guy in the past. Yeah, and then in the future, in the present day, he's a bad guy.
Yeah. Very much so. So it's very much a reiteration of that for him. I think as an actor, he'll be able to do it well, but with a better suit and some cooler powers. So I'm really happy for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson doing that. He's actually one of the few people I think could have gone from something like the the World Wrestling. So he went from TV wrestling over to actually being a TV and movie personality, and has done a great job. I know that John Cena fella keeps trying to do it. He just doesn't, for me, he doesn't carry as much personality as The Rock does. I'm not downing you, John Cena. You could easily pop my head like a zit if you wanted to. But Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson just has that charisma. So hopefully he can use that to really help springboard this product for DC, because DC, I feel, really struggles. They struggle a lot with this sort of stuff. And we've had there's some famous people out there. The Punisher writer from back in the day, the creator, had actually suggested canceling all superhero comics for now. Don't release any more serials on them. Only do a produced book on it. Digital presence is what matters. So it's basically, he was feeding into the idea that print is dead. I just hope he's not completely correct, because I would like to continue to receive print. It smells better, feels better, looks better. It's just better.
What if, instead of like producing comic books in the traditional 22 pages throwaway format, what if they produced like the House of X and Powers of X only as a leather bound premium edition?
Correct, and that's I think what he was aiming to.
Like a book, like any other book they would release.
I think that wait a few months that year, and you would receive that book. So that book would be for sale. You'd go get that book. The only difference, though, I think, is that with at least the published serials, they get a good thumb to know when that's happening. But we'll talk more on that at a different time. That's definitely something I think we could debate on for a while. Actually, let's go ahead and cut for a commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a different comic book subject, which is Image Comics. And I'm excited to talk to you about that. Again, don't forget to check out our Patreon link, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll be right back after you enjoy watching some commercials we produced for you.
Shh, they don't know I'm here yet. I have broken into the home and the offices of Turn the Page. My name is Quinn, and this is Quinn's Anime Corner. Welcome. So, Naruto, what is it? It's a show about ninjas. Kind of, sort of, maybe. He's got blonde hair, bright orange jumpsuit, so forget everything you know about ninjas. First of all, he's a 12-year-old boy who turns into a naked girl. Not very child-friendly. Kind of weird. He uses it to seduce grown men. His dad died, but they don't tell at the village that he is the son of their hero. His head is on a giant mountain, kind of like Mount Rushmore. He tends to graffiti it and deface it because it's fun, I guess. He ends up on a team, three-man team. A girl, an emo, and a guy who I swear is not David Bowie. He wears a mask the entire time. You never get to see his face, but he likes to poke people in the butt. Again, weird shows about ninjas, I swear. Yeah, he loves ramen. That's all he eats. That and spoiled milk. There's an actual episode about that where he has diarrhea. Don't know why. At one point, they join in an exam where there is like Vietnam, people dying. Yeah, 12-year-old kids competing against grown men to kill each other to rank up in their society. It's really weird. They find this creepy snake guy who's really a woman, who's really a guy, who's really a woman. We don't know. But you have a 12-year-old boy. It's kind of creepy. Or his mystical eye powers. Yes, there's eyes in this anime. They trade them like trading cards. It's really weird. And if you get enough eyes, eventually you get cool rippled eyes that can do crazy things. At one point, there's a giant war, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Jiraiya Sensei is a pervy dude who convinces a small 12-year-old boy to go peeping on naked women with him for research on a book. What book? Glad you asked. It's essentially a romance erotica novel. Kid-friendly. Remember, ninjas, I promise. They breathe fireball, make balls of energy and throw it at each other. There's knives. I think people die at some point. There's war, like I said. Multiple in the past, one in the future, by a guy who turns into a lady. Oh, did I mention? Spoilers. Duh. But I think I gotta go hear footsteps.
Hey, who's in my room? Hey, we're back. That's right. You just enjoyed some great commercial segments. Hopefully they weren't hijacked by any other frequencies. We'll find out when we post this video. But this is Star Power. This is Tony Stevens rejoining you with my buddy, my good buddy, the Ghost Man McClay, John McClay, the Sex Appeal. And we're here to talk to you today about Image Comics, something that I think both of us are pretty passionate about because as artists, we appreciate artists. And Image Comics was, as we all know, founded by artists, disgruntled artists. I don't know if you know this or not, John, but I think that the godfather of that movement was really Todd McFarlane.
Oh yeah, like Todd McFarlane spearheaded the whole movement. He kind of went around and recruited some people, and who thought that would be like-minded, and there were 7 of them by the end of it, like that left Marvel at first.
I know that it took him a lot to convince Jim Lee to get on board, because at the time Jim Lee was doing really well with Chris Claremont on his run with the X-Men. He was being recognized very well for his work. But that doesn't mean necessarily that Todd McFarlane's opinions on it and how they were being paid and respected was necessarily wrong. I think that he had some good points on that, and the reasons why he had for starting Image Comics really shifted the dynamic of how the comic book industry was working at that time.
Yeah, and I think that, McFarlane must have convinced Lee so well, because Lee would go on to pull in Waltz Portasio, who didn't end up becoming one of the partners, I don't think, but he was a part of that initial 7.
He was a part of what really made it boom, because they just had the good young names at that time, the hot artists that were making an impact in all the industries. So even with somebody who was young and very uneducated in art, such as Rob Liefeld, he got him on board.
He became the CEO of Image for a while.
Correct. And so Rob Liefeld was a big deal over there. But I think that young blood mentality, no pun intended, was a big reason why Image Comics became so big right there in the early 90s. I remember going to my local comic shop, and when I saw the first issue of Spawn, I was like, oh, that kind of looks like Spider-Man, and Batman had a demon child baby. And in essence, it was, because that's what Todd McFarlane puts out. It's kind of like a Batman-Spider-Man combo. A lot of the essence of his take on Venom, when he had helped create Venom for the Spider-Man comics, was present there between the longer jaw that was on the Violator, and you can remember that on Venom when he was a bad guy. The living suit, all sorts of things about it was very reminiscent.
Yeah, he just pushed it. You know, all the limitations when he was working at Marvel were gone, and so he just like pushed the envelope. You know, more exaggeration, more detail. You know, whatever he thought of, he could do, and he didn't have to answer to anyone but himself.
Yeah.
So then you get stuff like, yeah. Like here's the, let me pop up that issue of Spawn so people can see it. Like you weren't seeing stuff like this at that time. Like this is like, the coloring looks so painterly. I remember when I first saw this, like I was blown away by the colors. The first 3 issues had kind of coloring that was like this.
I remember even at the end of each comic, if I remember correctly, Todd McFarlane would actually put in alternate covers or alternate artwork for Spawn. So
little inserts, yeah.
Right, yeah. So all the other artists that worked over there at Image would take their hand at drawing his character, and he would put those huge blowout pages at the end of the issue. So when you bought a Spawn comic, you weren't just buying this story that was penned by Todd McFarlane. You also got like this extra artwork, and it was, like you said, I agree with you. It was very colorful. It was very bright. The blending patterns were excellent. When you have a whole company run by artists, I think the aesthetic appeal is what's really going to be pushed. And
like the art, they had that down. But, you know, they didn't all have a business sense about them. And so that kind of course,
I think Rob Liefeld bought cars for his assistants when he got really rich at that point in time.
And it wasn't like sustainable, you know, like, well, like, you know, there was deadlines that weren't met. And so because of that, like, so, you know, if you're a comic book retailer or reseller, you know, you order like issue 2 based on how well issue 1 sold, right?
Right.
And so like issue 1 sold like 1 billion copies, and I'm not being specific about the numbers here. I'm just using 1 and 2 as examples. But so issue 2, you order like 1 billion copies of them, right? And but then if it's delayed for like weeks or months, that interest in the subject matter kind of wanes in fans, and so it doesn't end up selling as much. Yeah, and so like, you know, you want to strike while the iron's hot, and so those delays I think really ended up hurting them early on, and like so like within a year they realized there was a problem, and they hired a new guy.
I think that Todd McFarlane had a good idea of it. I know that when a lot of those artists were with Marvel, Marvel understood what they were doing. So, for example, Rob Liefeld was hot new. He was doing the X-Force comic. Well, he started in New Mutants at the end of New Mutants, and then it turned into X-Force. He premiered as a character, and Marvel went ahead over to their, I think Toy Biz was the people that were doing their toys at the time. And they said, okay, let's go ahead and make 100 cable figures right now. People will buy them all. And that's how they ran things. Merchandising, production, everything was run like a clockwork machine for the interest of the public. Whereas when Liefeld started, and if I remember, his issues were actually Youngblood, correct?
Rob Liefeld, yes, that was his. So like, you know, let me skip to that little image here, and you can see the initial 7 images here, 7 creators. Like, so you got Waltz Portasio here, Mark Silvestri, Eric Larson, and his, you know, Jim Lee right over here in the corner, Jim Valentino, of course, Todd McFarlane, Spawn, and then Youngblood right there. It's Robbie Boy.
But see, and I do remember that Image was releasing toys. Todd McFarlane was a huge proponent for pushing the toy production because he understood that merchandising aspect. And that was a lot of what he was mad about over at Marvel was, hey, if I draw a picture you slap it on a t-shirt, I'm not getting paid for every single t-shirt that gets sold. So when he was at Image, he was like, hey, I'm going to make my own t-shirts. I'm going to make my own toys. I'm going to make this merchandising happen and work in my favor. So I do remember that like Youngblood had some action figures that were released, Wetworks.
There were some early Spawn figures prior to like the kind that we know nowadays. They were more like traditional, like a Toy Biz look to them.
Oh, yeah.
Like more,
they had
I
the
remember
basic
those
potions, but it was,
yeah.
they were great. Even my grandma knows because she likes and watches this show, and so should your grandma. But she didn't understand what I was talking about. She was like, what do you want for Christmas? I said, I want the new Spawn figure, or I want medieval Spawn, or I want Ninja Spawn. And she didn't really understand what she was getting me, and she'd get it for me. And when I opened it at Christmas, I was super happy, and she was like, are you sure? It's not quite the prettiest thing I've ever seen. It's like, that's because he's undead, and he sold his soul to the devil, Grandma. And she's like, well, if it makes you happy, sweetheart. And it was like, that's all I need. But he was really good at pushing out those products. And I do know that they also had a Wildcats run, which was Jim Lee and Brandon Choi. They had the Wildcats comic, which a lot of those characters are folded into DC now. And I think that they're
Wildstorm Productions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
when they first started,
Jim Lee became DC.
yeah, all those guys, the initial guys, had separate like production companies. There's Atomic Farm Productions was Todd's, of course, and Extreme Studios was Rob's, and let's see, Top Cow, Mark Silvestri. Jim Valentino had one too. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I think that Valentino, he's actually still spearheading the whole thing, running most of the company, isn't he?
I don't know currently. If he is, he's doing a great job because
I think Valentino was the one that was still doing it, and he, of course, he's the one that ended up green lighting the Walking Dead.
Yeah, The Walking Dead. There's a lot of like independent comics are really great coming out of Image now, or the past few years, like Saga, Walking Dead, and I think Invincible is another one. Which I think has the animated series coming out soon.
Oh, really?
And
I know that was a pretty good. It was a pretty good run of comics, and I mean, honestly, for me, I guess just because of my age, the initial run of it is what becomes immortalized to me. Just from those famous characters such as Grifter, Spawn himself. You had over on, what was it called, Cyber Force, they had that Rip Claw guy.
That was Silvestri's project.
So they had a lot of great, very appealing things that when you went to the comic shop, you're like, I'm buying this based purely off of the cover. I have no idea what I'm going to find in here or if there's any good source material. But man, oh man, it is some beautiful artwork, and I'm buying it right now. And of course, some people bought Rob Liefeld's stuff too.
Yeah. And then after,
I'm poking at you. I know you like Rob Liefeld, man.
I appreciate some of his aesthetic, at least the older from his Marvel days. Not so much anymore, but there's still a little bit of that energy that I liked about Rob's old stuff. Like after like 93, I think they started bringing in more creative people like Sam Keith and
Kirkman, of course.
What did Sam Keith do? Max. He did the Max. Dale Keown, Pitt. And if you want to talk about someone who could not meet a deadline, I think 4 issues came out in like 1 year. But the art was spectacular. And now you pronounce his name differently than I've always thought it was pronounced. So maybe you can correct me on this. Is it Jay Lee? You always pronounce it like Jolly.
I say Jai Lee. I think it's
I always thought it was Jay.
He
did Hellshock.
His name.
Yeah. Hellshock. I remember when that came out.
Let's just hashtag Jai Lee and get him to correct us, and then sneak him into an interview.
Pronounce? I should have looked it up before I attempted to say his name.
Well, yeah, I mean, but these guys, they went and they did their own thing. You thought they were going to be blackballed from the market, from Marvel and DC, but they've come back. They've done more stuff. They've become the new top tier people. I mean, going from working as a gopher and a janitor at Marvel Studios, and then look at where Jim Lee is now. He's running things for DC Comics. He's just doing so well for himself. Now, a lot of that comes from his ability and a lot of hard work that he put into it. And from the one time I ever got to meet the fella and ask him a few questions, of course I sounded like a little nervous schoolgirl, but you know, the way he put it to me was, if it weren't for his father throwing away his comic books, he would never have been a great artist, because it took him drawing those stories for himself for him to get that fulfillment. And that really is actually what spurred him forward into becoming a great artist that he is today, and working as an underdog at Marvel until he was noticed and recognized. And now look at where he is, sitting on a throne over at DC. So I think that a lot of them did really well for themselves, that I don't think all of them had the long-sighted view to see when they started Image Comics, but Tom McFarlane really helped them out in that degree, in having a little bit more of that view, that business sense of what he thought he should be getting out of this career. So I really do think that he's like the godfather of it all, in my opinion. But
oh yeah, Image was started by him.
Yeah,
he's the reason Image exists. Like, no, I don't think anyone can deny that.
And I think looking at the fact that Spawn's still running strong, it's over 300 issues now. I mean, I know I had the first 157 issues consecutive. I've actually gifted to an old buddy of mine, just because his love for Spawn runs deep, and he deserved it. But just reading that comic for that long, it was really compelling, in my opinion. I mean, Spawn was and still is one of my favorite things. I mean, he's on display here. So it's one of those characters that was compelling. But at that time, it was like, hey, what are we going to do with superheroes? They don't need capes anymore. What they need are guns, pouches, indiscriminate violence,
pouches,
hot women. You know, it was.
Those were all things that Marvel just would not accept. You know, we're not going to change. You can't draw Spider-Man that way. You can't give him pouches or guns. And McFarlane was like, why not? Like, you know, and so like apparently people wanted to see something that was different from what
everybody wanted pouches. I mean, the 90s needed pouches.
It did indeed, and so we must give credit where credit is due. Thank you to Rob Liefeld.
Liefeld and the pouch was a great thing. I mean, before then you had Batman with the utility belt, which may or may not look like it actually holds stuff. And after Liefeld came along, you got Cable, who is covered in shoulder pads and pouches.
You get shoulder pads, you get pouches, you get those like kind of like wrist braces everywhere. Robot arms.
How many stars does one man need on his face?
You get weird like kind of padded headgear. But like, you know, all that stuff is iconic now. You know, it's interesting.
It is. I think it's become a great staple to the majority of what comic book history is. And I think that they will be remembered as much as Stan Lee or Jack Kirby, any of the greats of our time. So I'm really appreciative that they did that. Shout out to you, Tom McFarlane, Jim Lee, all the big guys, even you, Rob Liefeld. We love you. We appreciate everything that you did and giving us a childhood worth remembering. A lot of their artwork really great. Hopefully we're going to have a bunch of images show up here for you so you can check them out. Now, we're coming up on the end of this episode, but I appreciate everybody for coming in, joining us today, hearing our thoughts on Image Comics, and going ahead and hitting like and subscribe. Don't forget our Patreon over at TTP Patreon. We'll throw up another link right here for you. Join in, get in the contest, win yourself the free TTP mug package. And let's just go ahead and say that this is one of the greatest shows you've watched today. So thanks again for joining us. For me and John McClay, we love you, we appreciate you, and don't forget to go out and have a great life and love and appreciate everybody around you as well. TTP signing out. We're turning the page. Join us next time. This is Tony Stevens signing out.